Chapter 1. The Shattered Legacy. Vivienne didn't knock. She never planned to. The heavy doors of Damien's office slammed against the wall as she burst through, fury burning in her chest like wildfire. The sound of her heels striking the marble floor was not footsteps, it was the march of vengeance. In her hands, she carried the proof of his betrayal. Papers blackened at the edges, brittle with ash, the acrid scent of fire clinging to them like ghosts. They weren't just documents. They were her father's will, her birthright, her legacy ruined. Without a word, she hurled the charred bundle across Damien's gleaming desk. The fragments scattered like shattered glass. A storm of destruction landing on contracts and reports he once considered untouchable. These, she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through steel, were meant to secure my family's name, my future. Burned, destroyed, exactly as you intended. Damien didn't flinch. He leaned back in his leather chair with infuriating calm, his dark eyes cool, his lips curled into a faint, knowing smirk. To anyone else, he might have seemed composed. But Vivienne knew him too well. She caught the flicker in his gaze, the brief spark of recognition that she had cornered him. "You shouldn't storm into my office like this, Vivienne," he murmured, voice smooth and deliberate, each syllable dripping with arrogance. "Desperation doesn't suit you." Her pulse hammered, but she refused to let it show. For years, she had loved this man. For years, she had given him every part of herself, believing he was her partner, her equal, her protector. Instead, he had gutted her life, sabotaged her inheritance, and tarnished her family's name. The ache in her chest was still there, but it no longer weakened her. It sharpened her. She reached into her folder again. This time, she pulled out a single pristine document, smooth, crisp, untarnished by flame. She slapped it down in front of him, her eyes never leaving his. "You missed one." The smirk slipped from Damien's face. His eyes fell on the document, and for the first time that night, the mask cracked. The codicil, the amendment to her father's estate, neatly signed, notarized, sealed. A single piece of paper that shifted the balance of everything. Vivienne's lips curled into the faintest trace of satisfaction. She leaned forward, close enough to feel the heat of his composure fraying. "You thought you erased me," she whispered, venom and triumph tangled in her voice. "But this gives me power over everything you value most." Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Damien's jaw tensed, his fingers curling on the armrest of his chair as though strangling an invisible throat. Then, with deliberate calm, he chuckled. "You really think a piece of paper will destroy me?" His tone was mocking, but she could hear the shift beneath it. The unease. The flicker of uncertainty. Vivienne didn't blink. "Not just destroy you, make you crawl." For a moment, the office itself seemed to hold its breath. Damien rose slowly from his chair, his height casting a shadow over her, his presence radiating authority. But Vivienne refused to shrink. He circled the desk, stepping closer, his voice dropping lower, softer, more dangerous. "You don't understand what you're playing with. The power you think you have, it will eat you alive." Her lips parted in a bitter laugh. "Better to be devoured than to keep living as your prey." They stood face to face, close enough that the ghost of their past intimacy flickered between them. Her chest rose and fell sharply. His breath brushed her cheek. The tension between them wasn't just hatred, it was history. Passion twisted into something lethal. "Vivienne," he said quietly, almost tenderly, as if her name itself was a weapon. "We were unstoppable once. You loved me. I loved you." Her throat tightened, but she refused to let her voice waver. "You don't get to use love as an alibi for betrayal." His eyes darkened, his voice dropping to a whisper. "And yet you're still here, still burning for me, even in your hatred." She pulled back, disgust cutting through the heat he stirred. "Burning, yes, but not for you, for justice." Her words sliced through him, but Damien's smirk returned, slow and infuriating. "Justice," he repeated. "Or revenge?" Vivienne's silence was answer enough. The air between them pulsed with a dangerous rhythm. The push and pull of two people who once loved fiercely, now locked in a war where every glance was a weapon, every word a blade. Finally, she stepped back, gathering the charred fragments of her father's destroyed will into her folder. Her voice was steady, laced with promise. "I'm not the girl you broke, Damien. I'm the woman who will break you." She turned on her heel and walked toward the door, but his voice followed her, low and threatening. "Careful, Vivienne! I'm not the only enemy waiting to watch you fall." Her hand froze on the door handle. The implication was clear. Clara, her stepmother, the woman who had whispered venom in her ear for years, who had tried to mold her into obedience. Clara had always loomed like a shadow, but now, Damien's words hinted at a darkness Vivienne hadn't yet uncovered. Vivienne didn't respond. She simply pushed the door open and left him standing there, fury tightening behind his controlled exterior. Hours later, under the sterile glow of the bank's fluorescent lights, Vivienne sat alone in a private room, a small safe deposit box before her. Her hands trembled as she slid the key into the lock. Inside were the remnants of her father's true intentions, preserved against the flames that had devoured everything else. She pulled out a sealed envelope, yellowed with time, marked only with her name. She broke the seal with shaking hands, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a second will, handwritten, signed, and within its lines was not only confirmation of her inheritance but a revelation so devastating it made her blood run cold. Her father's words spoke of Damien, of trust misplaced, of betrayal so intimate it pierced deeper than money or reputation. Vivienne's heart pounded as she read, each line etching a darker truth into her soul. Her father hadn't simply left her a fortune. He had left her a weapon aimed squarely at Damien. And for the first time, Vivienne understood the full magnitude of the war she was about to wage. The game was no longer about wealth or reputation. It was about vengeance, about exposing Damien for what he had done, about tearing him apart, piece by piece, until there was nothing left of the man who had once held her heart. Her fingers tightened around the fragile paper. Every betrayal, every stolen legacy, every burnt letter, she would make him pay. And when he finally knelt before her, broken, begging, ruined, only then would she decide whether he deserved the mercy of forgiveness or the full weight of her wrath. The future was hers now, and Damien had no idea how much he stood to lose. Chapter 2. The Seduction of Power. The boardroom was already buzzing when Vivienne walked in, but her presence silenced it in a heartbeat. Every director, every shareholder, every assistant holding a notepad, they all turned, startled, as she stepped through the glass doors with icy poise. In her hands, she carried the codicil her father had left behind. The single piece of paper that made her not just a bystander, but the woman who now had the authority to tear Damien's empire apart from the inside. Damien was at the head of the table, exuding command as always, dressed in the kind of power that cost both money and reputation. He didn't rise when she entered, but his eyes narrowed. A storm, carefully hidden, flickered behind them. He had expected resistance. He had not expected her to walk in like she owned the place. Vivienne didn't wait to be acknowledged. She strode directly to the table, heels striking against polished wood floors like gunshots, and took the empty seat opposite him. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. "Shall we begin?" she said coldly, sliding the codicil across the table for all to see. The legal advisor cleared his throat, confused, then alarmed. "Miss, Vivienne now holds final authority over—" "Enough!" Damien interrupted, his voice a low command, but it was too late. The words were out. The truth was undeniable. Gasps, whispers, shifting chairs. The once loyal faces around the table now looked at Vivienne with startled respect. Damien's jaw flexed, but he forced a smile that looked more like a blade than warmth. "It seems," he said slowly, "that you've been busy." Vivienne tilted her chin, every ounce of pain inside her transformed into weaponized calm, busy reclaiming what was stolen. The meeting erupted into chaos. Proposals were challenged, budgets overturned, and every time Damien tried to assert authority, Vivienne cut him down with the rights she now legally possessed. His strategies dissolved under her sharp words. The empire he thought untouchable bent beneath her command. Damien remained collected on the surface, but Vivienne saw the tension in his hand, the slight tightening of his grip on his pen. The same hand that had once caressed her skin now twitched with frustration at her defiance. When the meeting adjourned, she rose smoothly, not sparing him a glance as she left. But his voice followed her, low and venomous. "This isn't over." She didn't pause, only tossed the words over her shoulder. It's only just begun. That night, Clara came to her. The woman's beauty was preserved like fine porcelain, but her eyes were serpentine, her words always dripping with sweet poison. You've made a dangerous move, child, Clara purred, sipping wine as though she were at a casual dinner rather than threatening her stepdaughter's life. Damien isn't the kind of man you humiliate without consequences. Vivienne stood stiff by the window, gazing at the city below. He isn't the kind of man who should be allowed to destroy lives without consequences either. Clara's smile was thin, dangerous. Do you really think you can break him? Men like Damien don't break. They bend others. Vivienne turned, her eyes cold steel. Then I'll be the exception. Clara chuckled, swirling the wine. Revenge is intoxicating. But be careful, darling. The line between power and obsession is razor thin. And I know you once you burn to ash. Her words lingered long after Clara left, but Vivienne refused to let them pierce her resolve. The following evening, she attended the gala. Her father's foundation, his legacy, celebrated under crystal chandeliers and golden light, guests whispered as she arrived. The fallen heiress resurrected, dressed in scarlet that turned every gaze her way. And of course, Damien was there, waiting, watching. He intercepted her on the dance floor, as if the universe itself wanted them bound together, if only in conflict. Careful, he murmured, his hand pressing against the small of her back as they swayed to the music. This world is watching. You wouldn't want to slip. She met his gaze, her lips curving in disdain. I'd rather fall than dance to your tune. But his grip was firm, his presence suffocating. You're playing a dangerous game. Destroy me, and you destroy yourself. You and I are tied in ways you don't even understand. The heat between them was unbearable, a mix of fury and longing. The memories of nights spent in his arms clashed violently with the knowledge of his betrayal. Her body remembered him, even if her heart bled from what he'd done. She wanted to recoil, but the music, the setting, the eyes upon them, everything trapped her in his orbit. His lips brushed her ear, his breath hot against her skin. You hate me, he whispered, but you still want me. She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. What I want, she said fiercely, is to watch you burn. And she chose her moment. As the music swelled and applause filled the hall, Vivienne's voice cut through the crowd, clear and sharp. I wonder, she said loudly enough for those nearby to hear, how many here know that Damien built his empire on fraud, on destroying the very family that once trusted him? The room gasped. Heads turned. Whispers flew like daggers. Damien froze, his hand still on her waist, but his expression locked in a mask of ice. He couldn't retaliate here. Not publicly. Vivienne smiled sweetly, her voice low enough only for him now. Didn't think I'd air our dirty secrets in front of your precious allies, did you? His lips brushed her ear again, but this time there was no seduction in his tone, only a chilling promise. You think you've beaten me? He said softly, his words sinking into her veins like poison. I haven't even started. Her spine stiffened, and then he whispered something that turned her blood cold. Do you want to know the truth about your mother's death? Vivienne froze in his arms, her breath caught. The gala spun around her, laughter and music mocking her sudden stillness. She jerked away, her eyes wide, but Damien was already walking off the dance floor, his posture regal, his smirk cutting deep into her soul. The revelation struck her harder than any blade. Had he just confessed knowledge? Had he just tied himself to the darkest wound of her life? Her father's betrayal, her inheritance, her name suddenly they seemed smaller compared to this. If Damien knew something about her mother, then the war between them had only reached its first blood. And Vivienne swore she would uncover every secret he held, even if it destroyed them both. Chapter 3. The Poisoned Heart. Vivienne didn't sleep that night. Damien's words echoed in her skull like a curse she couldn't silence. Her mother's death had been the wound she never let heal, the shadow that followed her even in her moments of triumph. And now Damien had dangled it in front of her like bait, a cruel reminder that he held secrets deeper than betrayal, sharper than revenge. By morning, she had made a decision. If Damien thought he could use her past against her, then she would rip the truth from him piece by piece, even if it meant tearing out her own heart. When she stormed into his office, the air was thick with unspoken challenge. He was already waiting, as though he had known she would come. Behind him, The city skyline stretched like a kingdom he refused to surrender. His calm smile only infuriated her more. "What do you know about my mother?" she demanded. Damien leaned back in his chair, studying her like a predator sizing up prey. "You don't waste time, do you? Straight to the jugular. Answer me." He rose slowly, his presence filling the space until she felt cornered despite the vastness of the room. His voice dropped to a near whisper. "Do you really want the truth, Vivienne? Because once you hear it, there's no turning back. Your image of her, of your family, of yourself, it will never be the same." Her nails dug into her palms, but she stood her ground. "You owe me that much." He smiled faintly. "I owe you nothing, but I might tell you if you give me something in return." Her stomach nodded. "What do you want?" His gaze locked onto hers with a hunger she had tried to forget. "Dinner. Tonight. Just you and me." Rage boiled in her chest. He was toying with her, twisting grief into temptation. She wanted to spit in his face, to scream, but instead she forced a cruel smile. "Fine. But if you think for a second this is anything more than leverage, you'll regret it." "Everything between us is leverage," he murmured. The dinner was held in one of the most exclusive rooftop restaurants in the city. Damien had reserved the entire place, a show of power and control, but to Vivienne, it felt like a battlefield. Candles flickered between them, the night air heavy with tension. They barely touched their food. Every word was a strike, every silence a standoff. "Tell me about my mother," she pressed. Damien sipped his wine, unhurried. "She wasn't the saint you've built in your memory. She had secrets, Vivienne. Dangerous ones. She wasn't just a victim. She was a player in the same games you and I are trapped in now." "You're lying." "Am I?" His eyes bore into hers. "Ask yourself why your father erased certain files from the family archives. Why he never let you near the correspondence from those years. Why Clara knows far more than she ever dared admit." Vivienne's breath caught. The possibility was unbearable, but part of her knew he wasn't lying. Her father had always been evasive when she asked about her mother's final days. Damien leaned closer, his tone velvet and venom at once. "I could tell you everything, but truth is never free. What are you willing to give me for it?" She swallowed the fury that threatened to explode. "You're pathetic, Damien. A coward hiding behind riddles. Call me whatever you want," he said softly. "But you'll come back for the truth. You always do." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the marble floor. "I'll find out without you." He caught her wrist as she turned, his touch searing. "Be careful where you dig, Vivienne. Some graves don't like to be opened." She yanked free and walked away, but his warning clung to her like smoke. Days passed, each filled with endless battles over control of the empire. Contracts shredded, alliances shifted, accusations flew across boardrooms like arrows. Yet beneath it all, the tension between them only grew. Every glance felt electric, every argument laced with something darker than hatred. Then came the night of the charity auction, a glittering event filled with the city's elite. Another arena where reputation was currency and image was everything. Vivienne arrived radiant in a gown of midnight silk, her presence commanding. Whispers trailed behind her how the fallen heiress was clawing her way back to power, how she dared challenge Damien in public and lived to tell of it. Damien was already there, surrounded by admirers, his charm on full display. But when his eyes found hers across the room, the world narrowed to just them. The auction began. Art and jewels paraded before the crowd. Vivienne barely listened, her mind racing with strategies, waiting for her chance to strike. Then the final piece was unveiled, a necklace of staggering beauty, once belonging to her mother. Vivienne's breath hitched. She hadn't seen it in years. Damien's voice cut through the murmurs. 1 million! Her head snapped toward him. He was staring directly at her as he raised his paddle. She felt the trap instantly. He was baiting her, daring her to fight him here, in front of everyone. 2 million, she said firmly. Gasps echoed through the hall. The stakes skyrocketed. Damien's smirk deepened. 3, 4, 5. The room buzzed, but to Vivienne it was silent war. Each number was not about the necklace, but about dominance. Finally, Damien raised his paddle one last time. 10 million! The crowd erupted, stunned by the audacity. Vivienne's heart pounded. She could match it. She could destroy him here and now. But Clara's voice whispered in her memory the line between power and obsession is razor thin. Her hand trembled. She lowered her paddle. The auctioneer slammed the gavel. Sold, to Mr. Damien. Damien rose, accepting the necklace with a casual elegance that mocked her restraint. But instead of pocketing it, he crossed the room. The crowd parted as he approached her, every eye watching. He stopped before her, the necklace glimmering in his hand. Slowly, deliberately, he fastened it around her neck. His fingers brushed her skin, igniting fire she despised herself for feeling. "It always belonged to you," he whispered, his lips dangerously close. Vivienne's knees threatened to buckle. Rage, grief, desire all collided inside her until she could hardly breathe. But before she could react, a voice rang out across the hall. Interesting, isn't it? Watching a man buy his way back into a woman's life. It was Clara, standing at the edge of the crowd, a glass of champagne in hand, her smile as poisonous as ever. The room turned toward her. "Tell me, Vivienne, did he also tell you how your mother really died? Or is he still keeping that little gem tucked away for the right price?" Gasps. Murmurs. The gala was suddenly aflame with scandal. Vivienne froze, her world tilting. She turned sharply to Damien, whose expression didn't falter. His mask was flawless. But Clara wasn't finished. She stepped closer, her voice dripping with venom. "Careful, darling. The man who claims to hold your truth may also be the one who stole it from you in the first place." Vivienne's blood ran cold. Clara's words sliced through the room, leaving silence in their wake. Damien's hand lingered at her throat, where the necklace rested. His gaze was unreadable, but in his eyes, Vivienne saw both a warning and a plea. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for her reaction. And in that unbearable moment, Vivienne realized she no longer knew who was enemy, who was ally, or who held the real dagger aimed at her heart. Chapter 4. The Final Reckoning. The room still rang with Clara's poisonous words when Vivienne tore the necklace from her throat and flung it at Damien's chest. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the diamonds struck him, scattering light like shrapnel. His hand caught the chain, but his eyes never left hers. "Enough," Vivienne said, her voice shaking with fury. "I want the truth. Right here. Right now." Damien's jaw flexed, but before he could speak, Clara's laughter split the silence. She stepped forward, reveling in the spectacle she had ignited. "You really think this man will ever tell you the truth? He's been writing your story from the beginning, Vivienne. Erasing pages, burning letters, deciding which pieces of your past you're allowed to hold. And you've let him." Vivienne's chest heaved, torn between rage and dread. She turned to Damien, her voice trembling but fierce. "Is it true? Did you know what happened to my mother? Did you keep it from me?" Damien's gaze didn't waver. "Yes." The single word detonated like a bomb. The crowd murmured, scandal swelling like a tide. Vivienne felt her knees weaken, but pride forced her spine straight. She would not collapse before them. "You bastard," she whispered. Clara smirked, circling like a vulture. "He's worse than that, darling. Tell her, Damien. Tell her what you told me the night she died." For the first time, Damien's mask cracked. His voice was low, dangerous. "Careful, Clara." But Clara only raised her glass. "What's the matter? Afraid she'll finally see the monster standing in front of her?" Vivienne's pulse pounded. Her voice sliced through the tension. "Tell me." Damien's stare locked onto hers, raw and unflinching. "Your mother didn't die of illness. She didn't fade quietly like your father wanted you to believe. She was silenced, bribed, manipulated, because she was going to expose your father's empire for what it really was." The words shredded her insides. "Your lie." His voice sharpened. "I wish I was. Your father buried her with his secrets, and when I came into the picture, I helped keep them buried. To protect you. To protect what you thought you had left." Vivienne staggered, her nails biting into her palms until blood welled. The truth was acid in her veins. "You destroyed my inheritance. You lied about my mother. You call that protection?" Damien's tone broke, just slightly. "I call it survival. You weren't ready for the truth. If I had given it to you then, it would have destroyed you." Clara clapped mockingly. "Bravo! The noble excuse of a liar. How romantic." Vivienne's fury snapped. She turned on Clara, her voice a whip. "And what about you? What do you gain from poisoning me against him?" Clara's smile turned razor sharp. "I gain everything. The empire, the name, the legacy. Everything you two are too busy tearing apart with your twisted obsession. The crowd erupted into whispers, scandal spilling like wildfire. But Vivienne heard nothing except the roar of betrayal in her ears. She faced Damien one last time. If I ever meant anything to you, you'll prove it. Not with words, with action. His voice was steady. What do you want me to do? Her eyes burned as she whispered, choose. The moment stretched, the entire ballroom holding its breath. Then Damien moved. In a single fluid motion, he strode past Vivienne, past Clara, and signaled to the security staff standing frozen at the edges. His voice thundered. Escort Clara out! She no longer represents this family, or this empire. The room gasped. Clara's face twisted with shock, then rage. You fool! You think she'll forgive you? You think she'll stay? She'll hate you forever. Damien didn't flinch. Better her hatred than your poison. Clara's shriek echoed as she was dragged from the hall, her threats trailing into the night. The silence that followed was suffocating. Vivienne turned to Damien, her heart warring with itself. You think that fixes anything? You think casting her out makes me forget what you did? No, he said quietly. But it's the first thing I've done tonight that wasn't for me. It was for you. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You don't get to rewrite the story again, Damien. From this moment on, it's mine. And with that, she walked away, the crowd parting in reverent silence. The Empire's future shifted that night. In the weeks that followed, Vivienne seized control with ruthless precision. Contracts Damien once owned now bore her signature. Allies he thought loyal bent the knee to her strength. The boardroom that had echoed with his voice now carried hers. But the ghost of Damien lingered in every victory. One evening, she found herself standing in her father's study, the codicil that had saved her legacy resting on the desk. The flames of the fireplace licked the edges of shadows, reminding her of all that had been burned, all that had been stolen. And then she heard him. You won. She spun. Damien stood in the doorway, his posture weary but unbroken, his eyes locked on hers. Vivienne's breath caught. She wanted to scream at him, to drive him out forever. Yet part of her wanted to collapse into his arms, to believe the man she had once loved still existed beneath the ruin. You lost, she countered. He stepped forward, his voice low. I lost everything but you. She laughed bitterly. You don't have me. Don't I? His gaze pierced her, unrelenting. You hate me. You despise me. But tell me you don't still feel it. The fire, the hunger. Tell me you don't lie awake wondering if revenge will ever fill the hole I left in you. Her throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to crush him with the weight of her anger. But her silence betrayed her. Damien closed the space between them. His hand brushed her cheek, tentative for the first time. I can't erase what I've done. I can't bring back what I took. But if there's a single chance that love still lives beneath all this ruin, I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. Vivienne's tears finally fell, cutting hot paths down her face. She whispered, broken yet resolute. Then prove it. Not with power, not with lies, with truth. For the first time, Damien bowed his head. Then the truth is this. I love you. I always have. And everything I destroyed was because I was terrified of losing you. Vivienne's chest ached with the weight of it all. The betrayal, the passion, the years wasted in war. She should have turned away. She should have cast him out like she had Clara. But instead, she leaned into him, just once, tasting the bittersweet fire of a kiss born of pain and longing. When she pulled back, her voice was steady, decisive. This is not forgiveness. This is not surrender. This is a beginning. And if you betray me again, Damien, I will burn your world to ashes. A faint, broken smile curved his lips. Fair enough. The fire crackled, the codicil glowed in the shadows, and the empire they had both bled for stood on the edge of a new era, built not on lies, but on a fragile, dangerous truth. And for the first time, Vivienne felt the weight of her mother's shadow lift. The story was finally hers.